This is the Yanks Go Yard podcast with Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carannante.
Welcome to the Yanks Go Yard podcast about Weinrib alongside Thomas Carannante. We're in hell. Nothing's working. Twitter's down. Trying to post this podcast link. NFL free agency is happening in silence. Twitter's back up. The Yankees have lost their ace. The Yankees have lost the reigning rookie of the year. The Yankees have probably lost their World Series and playoff hero for an extremely long time, if not the entire season. Remember Chase Hampton? He also had Tommy John surgery. Remember JT Brubaker? He broke a bunch of ribs fielding comebackers. Clark Schmidt's not going to be ready for opening day. Only going to miss one turn through the rotation, they say. Who believes them when they say that? How hard is it to feel good about anything? Extremely. Carlos Carrasco is probably going to be in the opening day rotation. He looked kind of crisp yesterday, though, so silver linings playbook. Look, the American League is what it is. The Yankees are not in the National League. Some very good teams are going to miss the playoffs in the National League. Some pretty good teams might make it in the American League as a wild card. That said, I would even go so far as to say the flexibility afforded by a Stanton injury is better and more appealing than Stanton trying to play through an injury. Although we know he played through this injury last year and last October and looked pretty good. So hard to say that as well. But the offense that was already lacking a bat will lose another one for an extended period of time. And none of us will be shocked if it ends up being the full year. The rotation that was such a strength just about 2 weeks ago is now losing its captain as well as one of its key pieces of depth. And I love Will Warren too, but this is not the way we drew it up. This happens to everybody. Everybody loses from the rotation. But when you lose an ace, that's harder to replace. And the people out there speculating on potential trade fits and what do the Yankees do now? And I mean, I don't think it's pessimistic to just say like nothing. There's nothing to do. You lose Gerrit Cole, you try hard to compete. You try hard to stay afloat. You try to go ahead and grab a difference maker at the deadline, but you don't trade for Sandy Alcantara tomorrow. That is not how baseball works. You don't blow up your future trying to invent a trade for an ace. It never happens on March 10th. The Yankees just have to kind of eat this one, take their medicine, and even the silver linings are kind of sad. Like, well, I guess we don't have to be stressed out about Rafael Devers memes when Cole faces the Red Sox this year if he's never going to face them. Yeah, that's not really a comfort right now, given the fact that everyone who replaces him is probably also going to get stomped by Rafael Devers. But Thomas Carannante, welcome to the show. I was down in spring training this weekend, had myself a good time, had myself a fancy Palm Beach dinner on Friday night, and just got back to the Airbnb and was like, oh, ominous elbow test on Gerrit Cole. Well, that's an exact copy of a tweet I read last year, and this one probably won't end better than last year's. So he's going for a second opinion. I can't get desktop Twitter. Great stuff from Twitter, X, the platform, the everything app. But I'm being told that the second opinion is with Dr. Neil Elatrash, who gave him his second opinion last year. The difference is last year, we didn't know anything about what was up with Gerrit Cole's elbow. And we were, he was being cautious and seeing all the doctors he could. And then at the end of it, they said, you can pitch through this. And he did. And they went to the World Series. Don't fault him for that. But this year, he's already been recommended Tommy John surgery, which is what we knew was the case as soon as the doomsaying quotes started coming out. So the second opinion with Dr. Neil, you can't imagine it's about anything other than, hey, is internal brace an option? What's the best rehab option after my big surgery? Because it seems for all intents and purposes that he's going to have it. And we knew this was extremely likely last year. Somehow didn't happen last year, but you can't be shocked that after the ramp-up period of spring training, Cole's elbow succumbed to what we already thought he probably had suffered last year.
It's insane timing. Sad, upsetting, but obviously it was always something in the back of your head, right? And it further puts other things into question for me. First of all, this is hell. I mean, A, the injuries, B, Twitter being down. What is actual hell? Elon Musk delivering the news to you in person? Actually, the New York Yankees will be without Gerrit Cole for the entire year. Thomas, how do you feel about that?
Gerrit Cole's second opinion actually just came through. Actually, oh really? Yeah. What happened?
It was actually Doge is actually getting all the information. You'll have it shortly.
I want it now, though. I want it so bad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you cut that. Oh, great.
It raises questions for me in terms of like off-season preparation, right? So if you had Gerrit Cole, who had elbow inflammation last year, like this is, you're right, carbon copy of a tweet. The timeline is the same. The timeline is no different. It was first or second spring start, then out, then everything kind of snowballed.
You know, it was so funny too, and not funny at all, but in fact really depressing, was his disaster spring start last year was against the Blue Jays. Daniel Vogelback took him deep and bat flipped him. And then after that, they were like, he couldn't get that zip on his fastball because he had something nagging in his elbow. This year, his first spring start was against the Blue Jays, and it went awesome. And so I was like, I had a weird deja vu of like, oh man, remember last year when we were all worried about his elbow, and then it ended up not being so bad, but that Blue Jays start was the signifier, and then he blew him away this year. So I guess we're good. And then he comes out against the Twins, looks terrible. The stuff is registering as it should, the spin on the changeup or whatnot, but he's getting pummeled around the field, and then comes back in for an extra inning, gives up an extra home run. And you're like, that really did actually feel like that Blue Jays outing last year. And then lo and behold, it was.
Yeah, and we thought some of us thought he was experimenting. He was throwing way more splitters and changeups than normally. Like it looked like he was just trying to get his pitches up to speed with his secondary offerings up to speed. But when, like last year, there was no predicting it, right? He just got the spring and his elbow hurt, and that was that. This year, you had him come back after elbow inflammation for 17 starts plus 5 in the postseason, 6 in the postseason. After that, what's the recourse? Like, I'm just wondering because I don't know how teams go about this, and I don't know what the workload is after a season. Like, do the doctors say rest and we'll see how it is come February, March, or do they say let's keep a light throwing program going, see what's happening? Or do they roll the dice and say, you know what, we could just be in a worse situation in a couple months, and that's kind of what we have to deal with. But the fact that, I don't know, I'm not saying get the surgery. We were talking about like Masahiro Tanaka in the previous years. It's like, just get the surgery. It's like, no, that's not, you don't need to get the surgery if you don't need the surgery. But with how Cole's situation could have escalated and resulted in the surgery, like, was there no offseason plan to test his elbow and see how things were going? Was he not going for regularly scheduled imaging to see if there was any stuff going on after he had taxed, his arm 100+ innings after coming back from the inflammation? And then, we'll get to it in a little while, but there's various offseason questions now about how the Yankees handled everything. Because if we're sitting here saying, well, 1 year of elbow inflammation entering your age 34 season, like that could mean Tommy John surgery in your age 34 season, depending on what happens. And if the situation doesn't simply go away, I don't know historically what elbow inflammation, forearm strain situation just merely went away. It's either been a recurring issue to the point where it's hard to remain on the field on a consistent basis, or it ends in reconstructive surgery. So when you have a $324 million asset like Gerrit Cole, I don't know. My thought process is to maybe try and handle that a little bit more carefully. I don't know if they did. Again, I'm just questioning because you look at Jacob deGrom's contract, right? He made 11 starts the year before he signed that 5-year, $185 million deal with the Rangers. He's made 9 starts in 2 years, and like they might be limiting him at first in 2025, and he's making $40 million a year this year. So you're looking at 9 starts after 2 years of raking in like $60+ million. And now you're on the hook for one of the highest AAVs of all time. And you don't know what this guy's going to do. So I don't know. You look at the Yankees, who are so careful with spending and are so careful about who they target for these massive long-term contracts. And then it feels like they throw caution to the wind with someone like Stanton, who's oft injured, and they seem to manage it incorrectly with him undergoing testing probably earlier than he should. And someone like Cole, who, again, elbow inflammation, and it goes undiagnosed or it doesn't go further examined in the offseason. So that's where I have questions. And then you have the opt-out conversation, which we'll talk about. We have the Max Fried conversation, which we'll talk about. But I mean, look, it's not being pessimistic to say the season is over before it started if Gerrit Cole and Giancarlo Stanton are out for the year. It's just not.
No, it's not at all. That the dumbest. I forgive everyone for having these takes because everybody's always got to come up with takes. But I saw some people being like, I mean, there was a viral tweet on Red Sox Twitter, shocking. Red Sox fans weighing in, very classy on the Yankees injury issues, being like the Yankees are one Aaron Judge toe stub away from being the 2024 White Sox. No, they're not. That team won 41 games, but yeah, if you take the ace off a roster and the second best power hitter off a roster and their playoff hero, then they're going to get worse. If Aaron Judge gets injured, you remove the top 3 players from the roster. Yeah, they're going to be bad. Thank you for the insight. No team is built to withstand this kind of thing. So the Yankees can tread water, and with all their spending cap, self-imposed spending cap bullshit, I'll give them credit for adding Max Fried this offseason and doing the work to add a co-ace. It looked a lot better when there was a full rotation. You're going to lose someone along the way. You are never going to get through the full season with your projected rotation. That's why keeping Marcus Stroman happy in a 6 starter role would have been nice. Getting someone like Eric Fedde now, as the comments are saying, that might be nice. Maybe they'll do it, but it's not Gerrit Cole. It's not the same. You can survive. The Yankees did a good job building their pitching depth. So right now, their rotation, if Clark Schmidt does come back after that one missed turn through the rotation that they're saying, which I highly doubt happens, but let's say that is true, and they get to opening day with Fried, Rodon, Schmidt, Will Warren, and Marcus Stroman, pretty good starting 5. Good. Not championship caliber, but decent, acceptable. You can make your way through the season.
You're a wild card team.
Maybe. Yeah, you're a wild card team. You can make your way through the season with that rotation. But that's what happens when you do a good, solid job of beefing up your depth. You lose 2 key pitchers and you end up with a potential wild card rotation if everything breaks right. You can't shrug off losing Gerrit Cole for the year. As inevitable as Tommy John feels these days for basically every under duress pitcher, high use pitcher, and as inevitable as it felt for Cole from last March to present, it's still a massive blow that you can't fully get out from under. So yeah, to those who are overreacting or who are saying that it's an overreaction to say the season is over, I mean, the season we envisioned is already over. They could fight back and they could acquire talent midseason, and they could get a better than expected season out of Will Warren. But yeah, I mean, the comments saying we're screwed. Yeah, I mean, yes, we are. I don't know what you expect. There's
no replacing these 2 talents. There's no replacing Gerrit Cole over 32 starts, and there's no replacing Giancarlo Stanton in the postseason, or just Giancarlo Stanton being present in the lineup to lift everybody else up. There's just not. There's no equivalence you can acquire at this point. Like, yes, teams have made magical runs, right? 2021 Braves did it without Ronald Acuna. 2019 Nationals, 19-31 on May 29th, and they end up making a run. But think about what those 2 teams had. Those teams had edge. Those teams made the right trade deadline decisions. Those teams had a form of chemistry that the Yankees have seemingly lacked. Like the Yankees' personality and edge has arguably held them back during this window, on top of other things. Like, obviously all the personnel moves haven't worked out, but when push comes to shove, the Yankees lose to their most hated rivals. They lose big games that they should win. Gerrit Cole falters against the Red Sox. The Astros come back to bite the Yankees in some capacity in a way that you would have never imagined. You look at just what happened in October with Game 1 of the World Series and Game 5 of the World Series. So on top of losing 2 of their best contributors for either the long haul of the regular season or the playoffs, the Yankees now don't have that extra gear to kick it into with the personalities or maybe the leadership on this roster to take them where they need to be. And that's a problem, because that's the next element in line that's going to get you to where you need to be without the requisite talent, and they just don't have it. Or at least they might have it this year. I don't know, but they haven't had it the last 7 years. So why would I guess that they have it in the 8th?
And talking, I mean, I know this has got to be Cole centric because he's the one who's been recommended for Tommy John, and we can see the end of the line there, but it's hard to quantify what's going on with Giancarlo Stanton. But all we can say at this point is the issue is severe. He's someone who's been chronically injured in the past. This issue is new. He played through it last year, and they're saying surgery is a last resort. But okay, let's say he doesn't have season-ending surgery, right? Which has been mentioned a couple of times and was mentioned again this weekend. Let's say he doesn't have that. How is anyone confident that he returns during the regular season after not going through a surgical procedure? He's just able to shrug this off at some point and say, I'm going to play through it. Or maybe he doesn't play all year and is ready for October. Like he put his body through this last year. He would do it again. I don't think it's pessimistic to say, and this is not an anti-Stanton take, someone succumbing to a potential career-ending injury is not flame-worthy, but I don't think it's out of bounds to say he's reaching the end of his career. He may never play for the Yankees again.
Yeah, I mean, how with everything else that has affected him, for what, 2018? Well, 2018 he was healthy, from 2019 until present day, and now you have 2 elbow injuries that are, quote, severe and could need surgery. Like he's been on the back nine of his career for a few years now. We've seen it with the regular season play, in poor regular season play in conjunction with the inconsistency due to his injuries. And now you're talking about 2 elbow procedures. Like, yeah, that's there is no it's upsetting. Like, it's sad. It's you might have seen the last of Giancarlo Stanton emptying the tank for the 2024 Yankees, trying to get them to win a championship, and them coming up short because the Yankees decided not to go all in. The Yankees decided to have a pedestrian trade deadline. They decided to stick with guys who either were not delivering or they were trying to project that they might deliver without any proof. And the fact that they went and saw their opposition in the Dodgers go after every last piece of talent out there, throwing caution to the wind because they believed that they were going to take it the distance. It's upsetting because, again, you look at the Dodgers situation and the Yankees had them. The Yankees had them in game 1. Shohei Ohtani gets injured in game 2. And the Dodgers are lacking offensive firepower, and it was all there for the taking. And you look back at a few of these Brian Cashman misses, or I guess moments of passivity, and it's like there were windows and there were opportunities, and the Yankees decided to hold on to every prospect that they thought would be helpful in the next few years. And whether that remains to be true, I have no idea. But for the most part, Yankees prospects don't pan out. So I don't know what they're hanging on to them for if they can get major league ready talent that's going to help them. And then you look at all these other situations where they just wait too long to let players go. Like this offseason, they finally part with Anthony Rizzo, Gleyber Torres, Nestor Cortez, Clay Holmes. And it was like all of these guys in some capacity overstayed their welcome, whether they needed a role change or whether they needed a complete change of scenery. And the Yankees allowed those performances to persist in a negative manner, and it affected them in the long run. And it's insulting to Stanton for somebody who was battling every single day. He said bad adjustments led to this injury. I don't know what that means. He didn't elaborate further when he was talking to reporters, but
yeah, we'll never understand that.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but I mean, look, if he made adjustments to his swing that put his health in jeopardy and was better for it and literally offensively lifted the Yankees to where they got to in the postseason, like, I'd be mad if I was him. And then you flash back to last offseason when Brian Cashman is saying, it's part of Giancarlo Stanton's game to be injured. Like, I'd be even more mad. Yeah. And look, we've been critical of Giancarlo Stanton. I've been particularly critical of him, and it's mostly been a symptom of the Yankees refusing to spend more because they decided to acquire his contract knowing all the pitfalls, and then they experience the pitfalls and they say, well, we did what we could. And then you look at the fast forward to this offseason, the complete structure of how things went down, right? They knew about Stanton's injuries. They didn't address that. They capped their offseason at the end of December when they signed Paul Goldschmidt. They did nothing after that.
Yep.
And now you come into spring training and you have no third baseman yet. You have a left fielder who's having trouble defensively and honestly, partially offensively. Remains to be seen with Jason Dominguez. Mm-hmm. I have high hopes for him, but you just never know what's going to happen.
Hit a great line drive single yesterday. Love to see it.
Okay, good.
That's enough.
Then you have lost production from Stanton, and you didn't replace those at bats unless you actually believe Dom Smith is going to do that for, conservatively, it would have been 2 months. Now it's probably going to be at least 4.
Or Everson Pereira. People are talking him up now too.
Sure. I mean, again, I'm down. But again, proper roster construction is part of the game here, and the Yankees put a cap on what they were able to do this offseason. And then it makes you wonder about their plan B, right? So Juan Soto leaves, and you say, well, what's next? Because there's no one-for-one Juan Soto replacement. Doesn't exist, at least from a standpoint of, oh, I lost Juan Soto. How do I replace him? Well, in theory, you could go get Shohei Ohtani, but he's not available and you're never going to get him. So there is no replacement. You could go get Ronald Acuna Jr., but he's not available. So you're not getting him.
Can't get him.
In that moment, there's no one-for-one replacement. So you reason with yourself. You say, all right, what's the next best thing? All right, try to find 2 to 3 bats that could make up Juan Soto in the aggregate. And or if that's not possible, pitching, as much pitching as you can get. So you have Cole opt out of his deal at the beginning of the offseason, and there was silence for 2 or 3 days. And you're saying, well, what's going on? All the Yankees have to do is tack on 1 more year and $36 million, and this is a done deal. Apparently, the Yankees didn't want to do that.
No.
Maybe they had reservations about the elbow. I don't know. But then they let Cole opt back in at 4 years and $144 million. I don't think anybody was necessarily mad about that. But some people were questioning. Not me. Other people were questioning. They were like, hey, didn't Cole just kind of give the Yankees an out here, like with the elbow troubles? Like, don't you say, tip your cap, say thank you for your service and move on and maybe get 2 high-end pitchers this offseason and address that? I don't know. Would I have done that in that moment? Probably not. But the Yankees clearly felt a certain way if they were saying, we're not giving you any more money.
Yeah.
Cole opts back in.
I believe the paperwork was never officially filed because Cole got scared by the reality that they were not going to pay him more money, and he reevaluated the relationship. I would love, though, some real clarity on that from somebody in the know who can tell Yankee fans, especially now that the injury that we all feared has occurred. Was this a renegotiation? Did they agree to stay on the original deal, or did Cole panic and say, I didn't say anything. You guys didn't hear anything. I'm coming back. I'm not testing any waters. Because right now it seems to be the second thing where Cole got spooked by Brian Cashman's hardline stance and just backtracked. But I would love some information on whether the Yankees really did say, hey, we'll float the existing contract back to you. Don't even worry about it. Because they were clearly trepidatious about the extra year. So why wouldn't they be nervous about the next 4 expensive years? I will say this 30 more times this year, I'm sure, thousands more times before I'm dead or before Hal Steinbrenner's gone. He is insistent that the Yankees don't need a $300 million payroll, or that teams don't need a $300 million payroll to contend for the World Series. And he's 100% right. That is accurate. You can do it for less than $300 million, but with the way the Yankees payroll is currently constructed and the obligations they have right now, including Gerrit Cole's $36 million and Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton's money, which gets lower next year, but is still a lot of money. And we don't know if he's even going to be participating in Major League Baseball action. And DJ LeMahieu's $15 million and what have you. The way the Yankees payroll is constructed with all of these anchors on it, they can't compete for a World Series under $300 million. Somebody starting from scratch could. The current Yankees cannot. And the Dodgers payroll in the $400 millions is proving that while you don't need to get there, it sure as hell helps to be able to get there. So 2 ways in which Hal Steinbrenner is technically correct, but misrepresenting the process.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Cole may have gotten spooked over the Yankees not being willing to negotiate, right? Were him and Boris spooked about the open market? Were there any other teams out there willing to give him $165 or more million to, or I guess in this scenario, if we were to round up $170 million or more dollars, knowing the elbow troubles? I really don't think there would have been many teams. Because you're jeopardizing the first year of the contract. And then let's say he's healthy for the first half of the season, and then he goes down in the middle of the season, then he's out for the entire next year. So you just lost 2 years of the first 5 of a contract that you just signed for a player whose prime is going to be in the rear view very quickly. And for someone who, again, is entering his mid to late 30s. So it's not a great investment for a team looking for, to pay Gerrit Cole a ton of money for 3 years. Yeah, that's a different story. But again, knowing his knowing his situation, was there going to be a market for him? I am not sure that there was going to be. And that probably played into the Boras and Cole relenting, because when do you ever see Scott Boras relent in any situation? He will take someone like Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery or Manny Machado or Bryce Harper till the last second of the start of the regular season or the start of spring training to get the deal that he thinks is appropriate to set his client up for success. And you're telling me that the Yankees said, we're not giving you an extra year, and they said, oh, okay, fine. No, that's totally cool. Thanks. Like,
very scary.
Yeah, no, we'll keep that. Like, it's something is very, very fishy here. And I like, look, there's no ulterior motive. Like, the deal is the deal, right? The deal was you have 4 years, $144 million remaining, or you don't. And the Yankees gave him the option to take that deal back, so they didn't back out. But clearly something was known or something was feared. And the fact that all I'm saying is there wasn't further testing, there wasn't, they didn't go to greater lengths to figure this out. Like, maybe he could have used Tommy John in December or January, and then he's back by, earlier than opening day next year. But now we're talking about potential Tommy John surgery within the next couple weeks, and he's not going to be back until June of next year. So I don't know, but then you look at the fact that they didn't pay him that $36 million, right? And that was part of the equation. And it just really feels like they said, you know what? That money's going to Max Fried. If Cole goes down, we have Max Fried as our ace. We don't give Cole that extra year. We'll pay an extra year on the back end of Max Fried's deal. That'll insure us against it. So it seems like when you put all the pieces together, this was always part of the plan. Not that they weren't saying, well, Cole's going to be out with Tommy John, so we need to do this. But they said there's a possibility Cole could be out with Tommy John. And the way that we're going to reason it is either we're going to stack our rotation with talent, or we're going to have enough talent in the rotation to potentially absorb a Gerrit Cole plus one other hit. And now they're in a situation where they've absorbed 3 to 4 hits and they can't absorb any of it. So this is where even when they have a plan in place, it doesn't go right. Something's wrong.
Well, and that's when I get angry. Like, we get on Brian Cashman for not having a feel for when to use prospects and when to hold back. And where I think it's an accurate assessment to say that Brian Cashman is not currently my favorite GM in the sport of baseball. And I don't think he's this wizard that everybody gives him credit for his past dominance and wizardry and creativity. And it hasn't been the same for probably a decade now. And he has not been able to usher the baby Bombers forward in the way that he should have. He didn't supplement this core. But that said, even his best moves haven't gone well lately. I didn't mind the Frankie Montas trade. For an ace-level pitcher, it wouldn't have been my favorite target, but didn't give up much and convinced Oakland to send us someone who could have helped down the stretch. I didn't mind it. Of course, Montas appeared 6 times for the Yankees and was a complete waste of a roster spot. The issue that year was trading away Jordan Montgomery afterwards and not actually building the rotation, bringing in someone who could have been a number 2 and then getting rid of a number 3, number 4, and just being like, oh, I guess that's all evens up, and couldn't finish off whatever he intended to do. The Juan Soto trade is the number one now that people are relitigating, and I have no patience for this. Juan Soto is the best move that Brian Cashman has made in the past decade, maybe in his entire Yankee career. I can't think of an easier swing and a home run than bringing in Juan Soto. Built the best 3. I don't care that it was for 1 year. I don't care. You can't say that Brian Cashman isn't aggressive enough and then get on him for trading for just 1 year of Juan Soto. The Yankees built the best 3-4 in baseball. They went to the World Series immediately. They didn't re-sign Juan Soto, but they very well could have. He got bought by Steve Cohen like people said he would be. Fantastic. If you're not willing to risk it for Juan Soto, like what are you willing to risk it for? Who do they give up? Michael King for 2 years and some pitching depth, Randy Vasquez and Drew Thorpe, who ended up going in the Dylan Cease trade. Hey, I hear you. The New York Yankees were better off last year with Juan Soto, and you can't not trade for Juan Soto in case 3 of your starting pitchers get injured in 2025. That is bad process. Can you imagine if the Yankees held on to Michael King and never got Juan Soto, never got that year, never went to the World Series, never gave themselves the best chance at a championship? I can't imagine that. Just so I could have Michael King this year as potential insurance. And Michael King in a walk year, by the way, he's going into free agency. That's why he was an option for the Yankees to trade for and fill in this Cole gap last. That's why people are talking about him as a possibility, because he's not under contract beyond this season. So anyone out there saying the Yankees should regret giving up that pitching depth in the Juan Soto trade are missing the point entirely. I have no patience for that take. Yeah. I'll have patience for plenty of other contrarian takes and whatabouts. That one, I won't even give it the time of day. Imagine if the Yankees had not gotten Juan Soto, they would have missed the playoffs last year. They would have had Michael King in a walk year this year. That's what you wanted.
Or again, what if
they still wouldn't have Gerrit Cole this year?
Yeah. Or again, what if they didn't get Juan Soto and then it came out, oh, the Yankees didn't want to trade Michael King? Everyone would have been like, are you fucking kidding me? How dumb can you didn't want to trade a 30-year-old starter who has made 12 career starts for Juan Soto? Like, poverty organization, blah, blah. And now it's the exact, again, I can't pay attention to any of it. It's Red Sox fans cheering for the injury is just, it happens. I know not every Red Sox fan is like that, but that's Red Sox Twitter. And I think that tells you a good story about how their fan base kind of operates for the most part, or at least the louder part of their fan base operates. And then, relitigating any past trade that got a team to the World Series is crazy to me.
Different standard on Red Sox Twitter too. Like, imagine Jared Karavis, voice of Red Sox Nation or whatever, saying that like, oh, this is a killer Gerrit Cole injury. Now, Rafael Devers is devastated. Like, yeah, that's very funny. But imagine any prominent Yankees account tweeting like if Liam Hendricks goes down, like, because we usually dominate him. Like if Liam Hendricks has a second elbow surgery, be like, oh, the Yankees just missed out on 3 blown saves in the Red Sox rivalry this year. That person would get killed. You are not allowed to say that from a position of power on our end. But if you're a Red Sox fan, you can say whatever you want, because Gerrit Cole's a funny punching bag, right? You can say, oh, it's a tough injury. We're going to lose some wins because we can't kick his ass anymore. Like, I would love to pay for one fucking free agent who can beat the Red Sox, who can step up when it's time to play the Red Sox, so we don't have to deal with this Gerrit Cole shit. Because otherwise, I'm having trouble giving the Cole Yankees tenure anything more than like a B, honestly, so far. And he's someone who wants a Yankees legacy so badly. And I love how much of a robotic automaton he is against everybody else. When he has to face the Red Sox, he either gets cranked by their best player. Remember the intentional walk game last year?
Crazy.
Mental faculties out the window. And every other team, he's like this demon robot who dismisses, Cleveland, 7 innings, 4 hits, 11 Ks every time he faces them in an important playoff game. And then, against Boston, it's just a completely different story. So they're gonna really miss him. I won't miss that though, I guess. But again, like we said in the intro, I'm sure the Red Sox will hit whoever we replace him with equally hard.
Maybe. I mean, look, since we're positive guys and we like the Yankees, if Max Fried is a 32 start ace, if Carlos Rodon is, I'm not even going to say number 2, if Carlos Rodon is not an absolute roller coaster, if Clark Schmidt actually returns on April 3rd, if Marcus Stroman is not a disaster in the number 4 slot, and if Will Warren is looking anything like he's supposed to look like, and this is not even best case scenario. This is just asking for essentially the bare minimum, right? Like Carlos Rodon, don't have 1 2/3 innings outings where you give up 7 runs multiple times a month. Clark Schmidt, like, be healthy for a minute for once. Like, everyone forgets he's always injured, and it's a new injury every time. So like, we're not asking for much. We're just asking health for a decent stretch. Stroman, we know he could be managed properly workload wise. Do that. Will Warren, everybody talks highly of him. Scouts talk highly of him. Many worried the Yankees were going to sell low on him this offseason, and they didn't. Okay, great. So I'm not asking you to slot into the rotation like Luis Heel did last year and essentially replace Gerrit Cole, but like, go in there, give us number 5 numbers, low 4 ERA, 4.25 ERA, get by. I don't know. It's not the worst thing in the world. If, again, even look at the offense, is it a little bit bleak? Yeah, it honestly is. Like, beyond Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger, and I guess if you're optimistic about Austin Wells, like,
lead off Austin Wells has been a fun thing. Paul Goldschmidt's been a fun thing. Peraza and Cabrera have both been competent, and I hope they both get a chance on the open. I mean, Cabrera is making the opening day roster. I hope Peraza gets a chance too. Yeah. But yeah, the offense middling, and we're talking about the Yankees knew these injuries existed coming into the season. Where was the spending? Where were the reinforcements? Max Fried represents an opportunity to try to do something in the rotation. Where were the offensive reinforcements? Knowing what you knew about Giancarlo Stanton, you don't even need to have telegraphed his injury to us. All you had to do, like, you were entering spring training one bat down, regardless. Mm-hmm. So if you had signed a big bat or a potential rotating DH outfielder, nobody would have been like, is Stanton dealing with something? They just would have been like, oh, there's the offense we required. Good move. And instead, they wait and languish and self-cap. And they clearly picked between, okay, we could do a Fried, but then we can't do a Christian Walker. We can do a Fried, but then we can't do, Paul Goldschmidt. That's a nice fit at first base. That'll have to do, but that's not exactly the sure thing we were all looking for. We keep hearing about Brian Cashman targeting some right-handed bat, right, for either the infield or as a left field option, or maybe Grisham's money goes somewhere else. I'm going to need that at this point. Like, I'm going to feel much better with one more professional hitter somewhere, anywhere. Could even be a bench player, but you're going to need another pro for us to feel comfortable and confident. You can't replace Giancarlo Stanton. I'm excited for Ben Rice. I hope he gets a chance.
Same.
I hope he gets a chance, but that's a window open for someone who does not fulfill the same archetype as Giancarlo Stanton.
No. And look, the Yankees offense has some promising elements to it, but they're by no means a well-oiled machine. And in order for this to be a successful operation, the offense needs to be kind of relentless if the pitching is going to be down like this. And there are teams who are designed to do that. The Yankees are not. The Yankees famously are. They have like huge numbers at the end of the year, right? They lead the league in OPS, and they are top 3 in home runs, and they are top 5 in on-base percentage, and the list goes on and on, but they're always towards the bottom in batting average. They're always towards the bottom in situational hitting, late and close, all of that. They constantly lose close games where they get a gem of an outing from one of their pitchers and they can only support 1 to 2 runs. So, like, the totality of what the Yankees offense usually reveals tells a different story when you're talking situationally in a playoff series or in a hotly contested 4-game set with a rival on the road or something like that. So the fact that they don't have the characteristic of that relentlessness and of that, look at the Yankees right now. They don't have a leadoff hitter and they don't have a cleanup hitter. I don't know what other teams exist like that. And if those teams exist like that, they are small market teams who can't afford to spend and who don't have a direction with their roster. So money doesn't solve everything, but like the Yankees lack direction in many ways because they think talent will just solve the problems left and right whenever they need it to. And also, like, they don't act like they should when it comes to spending beyond their limits and beyond what one would deem the normal limitation is. So Yankees offense could be fun, right? Ben Rice could emerge. We love Ben Rice. Austin Wells could be a Kyle Schwarber-esque leadoff hitter. That would be fucking sick. Anthony Volpe, maybe he starts dominating at the bottom of the lineup and they figure out a way to accommodate him better. There are ways for Jason Dominguez. The sky's the limit for him. All of these are unknowns, though, and that's the problem. You cannot go into the season with 4 to 5 unknowns in your lineup and absorb these losses. So that's the problem, and that's where the pessimism stems from, because now you're sitting here and you're trying to project above average to elite numbers from guys who have not produced that yet or may never produce that, and you're literally winging it. You're living on a prayer at that point, and it's optimism and it's projecting a rosy outlook for something that is far from the reality. So, like, I am down to get excited about young players. I like this mix of young players, but we see that a mix of young players is a roll of the dice, or it's, take your 2 out of the 6 and those guys will be successful. You're not getting a 100% hit rate. You're not getting a 75% hit rate. You're probably not even getting a 50% hit rate. So when all of this stuff starts to snowball, like you can't sit here and blame Yankees fans for being pessimistic, or you can't blame some fans for going back into the well and saying, well, would have been great if we acquired this person or this person 2 or 3 years ago when the window was open. Would have been great if we went maybe the extra mile this offseason to ensure ourselves, because I don't know if they sign Nathan Eovaldi let's just say, for example, they sign Nathan Eovaldi as double insurance. And they say, you know what, we're investing another $25 million into our starting rotation for this year. Don't you feel a little bit better if Cole goes down? Don't you say, you know what, if we can slide Carlos Rodon into the number 3 spot, we have Max Fried, we have Nathan Eovaldi, we have Carlos Rodon, and then we could figure the rest out. Like, then you can start reasoning about maybe getting by this season. But the Yankees didn't do enough, and they did just enough to make it seem like they were a juggernaut. And many people did not realize if you took out 1 or 2 of the Jenga blocks, the entire thing was going to collapse. So that's where we're at, and I don't think that's unreasonable. It's very worrisome what has happened, and you can trace it back to the lack of depth moves, the lack of moves with intention. And you could look at the shiny consolation prizes, and they went above and beyond for Max Fried. Again, it was because they had that freed up Gerrit Cole money. They also went above and beyond for Max Fried because in theory he was cheaper than any of the offensive options that they were looking at, and they didn't feel were worth it. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's all perspective at that point in terms of what they think is better for the team. And I don't know. Again, I feel like this is at best a wild card team without these 2 pieces. And at this current situation, right, projecting Luis Gil out for 3 months, being cautiously optimistic about Clark Schmidt being ready, being unsure about Marcus Stroman's availability in terms of overall presence and impact at the beginning of the season. It creates a lot of problems, and it's going to create strain on the bullpen, which is something they wanted to avoid. So now they're in a situation where it's damage control. And like you said, there's no trade right now that exists. There's no trade. They don't have the assets to make that trade that you might think exists. Sandy Alcantara, maybe. But guess what? The Marlins aren't selling low on him after he just missed all of last year with Tommy John surgery and is already back in spring training, ready to go for opening day, throwing 100 miles an hour on the radar gun. Like, they're not, Yankees, you lost your best pitcher. Oh, God. Yeah, let me trade him to you for, what do you want him for? You name the price. Like, that shit's not happening. Dylan Cease and Michael King, Padres already waited. They waited months. They could have got these deals done during the winter meetings. Yeah. I don't know what happened. Maybe they didn't see a deal that they liked. Maybe it was smoke and they were just gauging the market prices for what they might be able to get at the trade deadline. AJ Preller's a smart guy. I'm sure it was a combination of both. You think they're going to be inclined to trade them now with opening day 3 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away? No. Why would they do that? It makes no sense unless they get a Godfather offer. And again, the Yankees don't have that in their arsenal. So they will be at the mercy of seeing what this group can do up until the trade deadline. And then they will be forced to be in a bidding war with other teams because, again, they decided to put themselves in this position knowing that these risk factors were there. And that's why it's frustrating.
Yep. They're going to flirt. They're going to be interesting. They're going to float in Dominguez and Peraza and Pereira at some point. I don't think you'll see Spencer Jones. You won't see Lombard. You might see Vivas. Like, you're going to see kids. You're going to see Ben Rice. Like, this is going to be moderately interesting, but you're going to hit on 40% of these, 50 max. You are retooling, and this is sad to say, unless you have an unbelievable first half and you're in a position to get Eric Fetty at the deadline or Sandy Alcantara or the biggest name available, you are auditioning to see which roles you need to fill most powerfully next offseason. Murakami coming over from Japan. There's a rumor that he's interested in the Yankees. He might be your first baseman long-term. Fantastic. See what you got in Ben Rice. See if that's a place where you want to invest your money. Kyle Tucker. Do you want to invest $450 million in Kyle Tucker? Let's see how the outfield plays out this year. Let's see how the season in Chicago goes. Do you want to... The Chicago's Cubs, see how that goes. There are plenty of top-tier free agents next offseason. Nobody wants to be talking about next offseason on March 10th.
Nope.
But you kind of have to be, because this is also sad. But what team do the Yankees remind us of right now as they're looking at Dylan Cease and Zach Gallen and Framber Valdez and Michael King next offseason? They feel like the Cardinals to me. They feel like the Cardinals with Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker and Michael Ciani and J.J. Weatherholt and Michael McGreevy and Tink Hence. And maybe you've got a whole bunch of guys and Alec Burleson. And maybe it turns out you hit on everybody. You've got 5 20-homer bats and you're a threat in the weak NL Central. Could happen. Didn't happen last year. They tried it. A bunch of these guys bombed. Jordan Walker went back down to the minors. They were left with a team of a bunch of OKs, and they finished at the bottom of the division. So could the Yankees be a wild card team throwing out Dominguez, Rice, Peraza, Pereira? Yeah. Could they also be the worst team in the American League East? Yes. No, they will not be a 41-win team. They will not be the Chicago White Sox, but they could be pretty bad. And in that case, they'll have learned what they need to learn for next offseason. The hope then is that when they get to next offseason, whether it's a success or a failure, that's when they have to operate like the Yankees. They cannot operate like the Cardinals because the Cardinals went into last year riding relatively high on the youth movement, supplemented by Arenado and Goldschmidt, and they fell apart. And then they went into this offseason and said, we're going to spend $0. That does nothing for anyone. They're trying again. They're going to be dangling Fetty and Arenado all year. They forgot to reset. They forgot to hit the button. The Yankees need to learn what they can learn from their current core and then enter next offseason ready to spend $250 million on multiple players. That's just what they have to do if they want to reopen the window. Although I will say, probably controversially, and only once, but there was a great tweet from K-Lou circulating yesterday about how people were complaining about how the Yankees wasted Aaron Judge and Gerrit Cole's prime. Aaron Judge in many ways wasted his own prime. One of the primary reasons they haven't been able to get over the playoff hump is when they get there, he does not perform. So I don't want to talk about that for a very long period of time, and it doesn't really require much more explanation than that, but they had a good chance to not waste a World Series trip last year, and he failed to impact the World Series until Game 5 when it was essentially too late. And then he undid that positive impact by starting the unraveling in the spiral. So I'm a huge Aaron Judge fan. But in terms of letting him down in his prime years, the Bryce Harper thing, absolutely. But they go ahead and get Stanton. They go ahead and get Soto. They go to the World Series. They roll out the red carpet for him, and it doesn't work. He doesn't perform.
It should have been better. I think it's a combination of things. He needed to perform better. That was always the reality. He needed to be at least a semblance of his MVP self. And like the Yankees still needed more pieces. They had a non-third baseman playing third base. They had the worst second baseman defensively in the league. They had the 28th best right fielder, and they were obviously trading that off with Soto's offense, so it made sense. But then you had left field, which was a black hole offensively and just barely above average defensively. And then you had Anthony Rizzo at first base. And then you had a slumping Austin Wells that you refused to remove from the cleanup spot. So, like, the list goes on and on. The one thing to note here is that the Yankees, reportedly, according to John Heyman, have insurance on Cole's contract. I don't know what that means. It's, quote, good insurance.
Oh, great.
Don't know what that means. Maybe it's star insurance. Who knows? But it could be some sort of.
If they didn't, we're not using Star. I mean, those guys are crap.
Rob Manfred bans them from the league because of collusion.
Yeah, you should use Star. We're not going to use them. They
But they have insurance, so I'm wondering what that means for the payroll. Does that mean you get this money back and you could sink it back in, and a portion of the money doesn't count towards the CBT? I don't know. There's got to be some workaround here, because the Yankees, for example, let's say they get $50 million for Cole being injured for the year. They just pocket $14 million and they call it. Like, shouldn't work like that. Like, this is a product everyone's paying for, so there's got to be something that has to go back into the roster, and the insurance policy has to factor into that. And then if that's the case, you can't tell me that they don't have insurance on Giancarlo Stanton's contract. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I don't know for sure. And if they were to get insurance on Cole's contract at the time when they signed him to the largest starting pitching deal, both years, overall value, and average annual value in baseball history at the time, hard to believe that they didn't do the same when they acquired Giancarlo Stanton's largest contract in North American history, in North American sports history. So if there's a way where he has to get, say this is career ending and he's done for the next 3 years and it's over, like there's got to be some more financial flexibility there. What's it look like? And then at that point, great. Do you just say goodbye to DJ LeMahieu and start trying to revamp this offense in some capacity? Because at this rate, they cannot afford to hang on to anybody who is dying on the vine or who is not working out in terms of roster fit, personality fit, whatever. They need to act more swiftly, and they need to figure out how they're going to build the right roster for this season without these two pieces. And I know that it's not going to be easy, but you're talking about the New York Yankees here. You're talking about a GM who's been in the space for over 25 years, who has navigated tough times, not incriminating Brian Cashman for ruining this entire window. Yes, missteps played a role, but he's usually good at his job. He just makes some questionable moves that make you wonder what could have been. And you have to remember he's also on whatever restriction Hal Steinbrenner has in place. There are spending limitations. You'd think if Brian Cashman wanted to get all the best players in the league that he wouldn't do it. Why would he not do that? I mean, maybe. I guess it's possible. Maybe ego plays a role.
He might hate all the best players in the league. We don't know.
Or his ego might be inflated. I don't know. But like, look, they have a GM well-conditioned for this. They have enough talent on the roster to at least be considered a wild card team. Again, the AL East, not, it's a tough division, but it's not like you don't have a clear-cut favorite when you remove two of the Yankees' best players. Like it seems like it's going to be an absolute dogfight from the beginning to, like, I could see the Orioles. I could see the Blue Jays winning the division if things go wrong for the Orioles and the Yankees and the Red Sox don't meet their ceiling. I could see the Red Sox winning the division wire to wire. I could see the Orioles taking advantage and getting all the breaks that they've envisioned over the last couple of years and making a run. Like, it's all possible. The Blue Jays could have renewed energy based on their offseason additions and hopefulness that Vladdy will come back. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. The AL is still generally wide open, so it's not over for them. But if they are going to make an impact, and maybe this is the position the Yankees need to be in, like if you really want to be an optimist, 2017, what were they? Nothing.
Yeah.
They were a team that did not seem that good. They were a team that got into the playoffs and didn't really have a high ceiling. They were a team that was down 2-0 in the ALDS against the top Guardians were the top seed that year, right?
In 2017, oh yeah, they're 102 win Guardians team.
Yeah, top seed down 0-2 in the DS. They come back and win. Like, maybe the Yankees need that underdog vibe. Maybe the spotlight of being the favorite and having the highest projections in Fangraphs isn't working out. Like, I don't know. There's always a shift that happens when that sort of stature or status quo changes. So I don't know, but nonetheless, they have the personnel baseline. They have the GM to push the envelope if they need to. It's just a question, a matter of, will he do it? Will Hal Steinbrenner sign off on more spending? I don't know, but that's why we're here to talk about it. And now, with as uncertain as ever, Cole's waiting for the second opinion. Stanton's getting more PRP injections as they try to figure it out. You have to sit here and you say, great, these guys are out for the year.
Yeah.
You have to. There's no other way to go about this season, because what's the best case scenario? Cole misses the first half of the season again, and then he's battling back through injury in the second half. Stanton does his usual thing where he misses 2 months, comes back, performs inconsistently, and then you're just rolling the dice, hoping that he's healthy for October. All of it seems like a more massive risk than just saying, you know what, shut him down for this year. We'll see you in 2026, but we're not giving up this year. Maybe we can get crafty and figure it out.
Yeah, I'm excited for the craftiness. Now I have circled back around. It's insane levels of cope. And if you watch the whole show, you know that we think the Yankees are a worse team now than they were with a healthy Gerrit Cole top the rotation and Giancarlo Stanton in the lineup. Duh. But now's the time. If you get the finality of the surgery news, if you don't have to wait for him to return in July, and then maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, and then maybe he gets it in the midsummer and misses all of 2026 too. If you could just move on now and it's okay, Gerrit Cole's down for the year. Gerrit Cole's down for a portion of next year, but this is a surgery with an extremely high success rate. He is a super freak on the mound. He will be back. He will be great when he returns next year, but he's not going to pitch this year. You don't have to worry about every start being a ticking time bomb. You don't need to worry about the Red Sox teeing off on him. You don't need to worry about, his velocity is a 1.5 miles down and he's given up 5 runs in 2 innings. Is today the day that he breaks? You can just move on and say, we trust our depth as best we can. We're going to get somebody at the deadline as best we can. And now we have more lineup flexibility without Stanton in the DH spot every day, which is a huge benefit. And don't forget, Stanton reasserted his legacy last October with an historic run. And I'm glad he did. And he earned it and nobody wanted it more. But Stanton was a negative 0.8 WAR player in 2023. He hit 191 with 24 homers and an 87 OPS plus. Last year, he finally got back to a semblance of what he'd been, but he still was worth under 1 WAR. He was worth under 1 WAR in 2022. He hasn't been Giancarlo Stanton since 2021 for a full season. So
that second half in 2022 was bad too.
Bad, injured after the All-Star game, and we thought maybe winning All-Star MVP in LA was going to be his ride off into the sunset moment. It wasn't. Now, ironically, it feels like maybe going to the World Series and hitting that majestic home run in LA is his ride into the sunset moment. But either way, using a hobbled Giancarlo Stanton all year to play DH every day and never play the field and just take up a lineup spot while he's working through something, not exactly what you want. You're missing peak Stanton. You're missing last year's playoff Stanton.
Yep.
But this does open up an avenue for the Yankees to get creative here. The rotation, there's no coming back from losing Cole. But at the very least, you can move on quickly. You don't have to have a cloud hanging over the entire season. Although every time a pitcher struggles or they lose, a reporter's going to rehang that cloud. They're going to tape that cloud up and say, remember Gerrit Cole, that guy? And it's going to be really annoying. But if you don't have to worry every single start about whether the elbow is going to hold up or not, like remember the Mets start last year where it was just like, oh, wow, he might have worked all, April and May to rehab and he just didn't work. Like he's going to miss time anyway because he's out here giving up meatballs. Like not having that, helpful. Not having the pressure of Juan Soto in a walk year, helpful. Every injury was so magnified last year. It was like, this is our 1 year with this guy. And yes, ironically, they traded an infield prospect in Caleb Durbin they could really use for 1 year of Devin Williams. And now this year kind of feels cursed. So that's great. But there was so much Juan Soto walk year pressure last year that every tweak, minutia, breathing wrong, felt like the end of the world. You were watching every game hoping that there was no season-ending injury in there. Now we're getting the season-ending injuries out of the way early. Play the kids. Free up the lineup. Free up the DH spot. Give Will Warren a try. Yoendris Gomez just pitched today. He was great. Use him in the bullpen. Use him for a spot start. Like, get experimental. But no, if you listen to the early portion of the show, you know that we think there's a very low chance of this team being better than the version with peak Cole and Stanton. That's not what we're saying. They have an opportunity to be interesting. They have an opportunity to learn what they need to learn for 2026. But in terms of reaching their peak value and peak performance this season, it's probably over. It's going to be a very low percentage probability that they're going to make a World Series run with this group. So see what happens midseason.
Yeah, that's the best glass half full coping we got for you, folks.
Yep.
It's the best. That's what we got. I mean, the team's got young players. The team has prospects that they are hopefully relying on. They have the MVP. They have starters who used to be all-stars. They have 2 of the best relievers in the game. Put the rest of the pieces together. I don't know.
Yep.
We'll see.
The version of the season that we wanted to see is over.
Yeah, version of the season.
Hyperbole.
Yeah, the version of doing what you did last year to a more dominant degree is absolutely not happening.
Yeah.
And it probably never was happening, even with the pieces in place, just because of what you lost. But now the chances of you potentially replicating that are over. So we'll take you into 2025 with a renewed outlook, renewed perspective. We're not going to sit here and be defeatists. We're going to understand where this team lies, what the expectations are, and go from there. Not every week is going to be us whining about the sad reality. We'll whine about it now because it sucks, and no other team, again, I have not experienced another team who has gone through the stuff the Yankees go through every year at spring training. So It is unique for sure in this modern era.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's never ending. I mean, the tweet, I think it's a Chris Curry. It might be a Cuddy tweet of just the list of injuries. Like it's March 10th. We're halfway almost through spring training games. it's been 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks of spring training game action. This is what we've got. But guess what? This is what we've got. Separate the real fans. If you're watching this year, you're interested in the minutia. You're like watching preseason football. It's like, all right, let's get a feel for these guys. Let's see, let's see what Yorbit Vivas has. Oh, cool. He broke off a nice 12-yard chunk play. Maybe we can trade him for a 9th rounder or whatever. But hey, we'll see. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for joining us on the stream today. Thank you for joining us to the audio listeners. I'm Adam Weinrib. You can find me on Twitter at Adam Weinrib, but actually you can't because that site doesn't work. So I'll never be there because I can't open my profile or say any words. But if I could, that's where I'd be. Thomas Carannante, where can the people find you?
If I could be anywhere, it would still be at Tommy's_takes. We are at the official Yanks Go Yard account at Yanks Go Yard FS. Head on over to yanksgoyard.com. All the content is there. If you want to read, you don't need to listen to us all the time. Plus, there's stuff we're writing about that we don't talk about on here because we don't need to be live for 8 hours. But we appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you guys reading. And if you could like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be a great help. Tell your friends, tell your family. It's going to be a long Yankee season ahead. We're hoping for the better because we're not going to get the best. The best version is out the window. Now, rearranging perspective, rearranging expectations. It's almost like a new form of coverage. We're in for the challenge. Hope you guys are along for the ride. We'll talk to you again on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern live right here.
Yeah, whether it's good or bad, it's going to be long regardless. That's kind of how it goes. We appreciate everybody joining us. Until next time, take care.